Okay. Introducing my next guest, two friends that took a clip of a baseball player's highlight video and made it into a brand. From minor league baseball, college baseball, softball, Lidom, KBO, and more. These boys have range when talking about the joy of baseball. One is moonlighting as Hanley Ramirez from the Marlins. The other shares the same B-day as Chuck Norris. Ladies and gentlemen, the two hosts of Cespedes BBQ, Jake Mintz and George Schusterman. Thank you for coming on the show, guys. How are you?
Hell of an intro. That was great.
Eddie, I gotta say, man, not only did you pack a lot in there, I mean, you did your research. You did that was truly one of the best intros.
I'm not a stalker, but I
know. No, it's good. It was
just my birthday.
My birthday this week. There were a lot of celebrities who I share a birthday with, and I'm glad you chose Chuck Norris. We got Carrie Underwood, we got Timbaland, we got John Hamm, we got, of course, Diane Viciato. We got all kinds of people. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for the intro and excited to talk about baseball.
Oh, no. Yeah. So, kind of new to baseball. We try to take the sport more easily digestible for new fans. It's kind of like the Cliff Notes of baseball. And the topic we're discussing today is weird rules in baseball. Now, I had a whole bunch of questions lined up for you, but then MLB decided to throw us a curveball and switch it up for the minor league. So I wanted to open up the discussion with that. I see the new rules that are coming for experiment for the major leagues. And one thing that I noticed besides the new rules is that they're implementing these changes in such a divisional way, which AAA, AA, single A, certain single A's. I want to know, what's that all about? Why don't they just do it in all single A or all AA or all AAA?
I think the league has like 8 ideas and they want to implement all of them at once and kind of throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And the best way to do that probably is to just split it up. If you have all these different leagues and none of these teams are playing games against other teams and other minor leagues, might as well go for it. And I honestly, it's a little confusing for players who might get promoted and then they have to learn new rules. But I think that's something that you'll pick up on in time. And I don't think that what I would guess is the stratification of different rules at different levels is really going to hinder anyone's development significantly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think it's a little janky and it's a little odd, especially if you do have players bouncing back and forth between levels. But they're all adults. Most of these rules are very conditional, pitchers who have a good pickoff move or, base runners who are used to stealing more often. Like certain kinds of players are going to be more in tune to these rules. Others, it is literally not going to affect them almost at all. But I agree. It's a little strange to follow, but I think they're just trying to, and you could also argue maybe it's not the best science if you're changing the variables at different levels and it's not always as consistent as you might think when you're testing all these things out. But at the same time, I kind of see how you want to maybe impact the levels closest to the majors the least right away, which is why, AAA has kind of the least crazy rule with the base changes.
Talking about AAA, the size of the base increasing on second base from 15 by 15 to 18 by 18. That is something that I personally find exciting. I wish one of my favorite players, Sean Figgins, had that because it would have been more awesome for him too. So,
well,
I think the bigger bases are great because I think if you're a fan, you won't notice at all. I think most fans could watch, especially the fans that are new to baseball that are listening to this. If you watch a game, you couldn't really tell that the bases are 3 inches bigger on every side.
I don't think I've ever seen second base before.
Me neither. And I feel like the first basemen are gonna know. The first baseman will know that they're a little bit. It's when if someone there's a scratch on your steering wheel of your car, and your whole world feels off because there's just a small little change in your day-to-day that you're so used to. That's what it's going to be like for first baseman. But
I wish I could relate to that. Yeah. I'm from New York. I don't have a car.
There you go. But this is a great, this is an unobtrusive rule. This is not going to ruin anybody's day. This does not change the vibe of baseball. It just makes it slightly easier to steal and slightly safer running to first.
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
how does this like hold on.
No, I'm used to that. Don't worry. I'm in New York too. Don't you? I'm
really?
very, very used to that. Yeah.
So what about like the value for a catcher or the their value for throwing base runners, like catching base runners? Where does that put them, and how does the MLB Players Association deal with this as well?
So this applies to some of the other rule changes, right? When it comes to the automatic strike zone, when it comes to the pickoff rules, it seems like a lot of these rules are meant to help base runners. Now, you could say that the automatic strike zone might actually hurt base runners because now catchers don't have to worry about framing or how they set up at all. It's almost going to be entirely, I just have to catch the ball somehow and then focus on throwing runners out. Who cares about how I present it? So maybe that balances out. But the notion of trying to inject action into the game, right, which is something that a lot of people talk about because we have so many strikeouts and home runs aren't really action. The ball just goes over the fence and then the guy runs around the bases. It's not like there's no tension, right, once the ball is hit. If we're helping base runners, that's fine with me, right? Like that's a style of baseball that we in our lifetimes really just haven't seen. I mean, we had more like the Jimmy Rollins types and the Juan Pierres, like we had that a little bit, but it is essentially completely gone from the game. And any way that we can get that back, I do definitely support. But I mean, it's going to take some experimentation for sure. I don't know if these rules will be the perfect fit, but we can get to it. I know Jake and I are big fans of the pickoff rules in particular.
Yeah.
One player that I hope I want this to happen for one particular player, and I think it'll just make them even more of an all-star is Trey Turner. I think that he's one player that, out of a lot of positional players have gone under the radar because he had one injury or so far, but his base stealing is one of the most amazing. And I think it'll highlight his out of most people. And so I'm excited about this. But it just seems like it came out of nowhere. Like we didn't hear about this till like the day of it happening. Yeah. Or am I wrong? Was there like chatter about this or anything?
No, not. And this is what's weird is like usually when MLB does something like this, there's like months of like half leaks through the media and like people get mad about it and then they kind of walk it back and then there's an official announcement. This was like, here's what we're doing, deal with it. And like, again, there are a million reasons to criticize MLB. I thought, all things considered, the rollout and the rules that they're trying to put in place are overall, I think, a good thing as a whole, except for robo-umps, which I am fervently anti-robo-umps.
Oh.
But other than that, I thought that, we heard no chatter about it. And it was kind of nice to like, it's like if you go to a restaurant and you don't even have to order, someone just brings you your food. You didn't have to worry about like what you wanted. There you go. There's just a burger on your plate.
No
I wonder how the actual like clock for pitchers is it going to be like a basketball clock? That's what I want to see. I really want to see that. Or is it going to be something that's like, how would a pitcher see the clock, and how would it like remove their concentration from actually pitching? That's one thing that I want to.
So they've already done, like, this has already existed. They did it in the fall league, which we've seen. It is basically like behind. It's not directly behind home.
It's like on the ground almost.
Yeah, it's like on basically the lower padding of home plate or of the backstop, but like kind of off to the right or off to the left. And they usually have it in multiple plate, like at least 3 spots around the stadium. I mean, realistically, unless they were like, when we first heard about the pitch clock like 3 or 4 years ago, it was like, oh my God, are we going to like buzzer beating pitches? Like, and like the notion of that is both like almost exciting and also like absurd and maybe arguably dangerous. But realistically, if you actually watch the game with the pitch clock, which we have, like these games have existed in the minors, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Like it probably does speed the game up because you can't take 35 seconds and you can only take 20 or 25 seconds. But like, pitchers are aware of it. It's still plenty of time. You are still allowed to step off to some degree. It's not like you're forced in general. Like there's usually more leeway in it. Now, that said, it's very possible that now with the new ones, it seems like, and they said in the rules, like it'll be more strict than normal. Maybe they do start to actually punish pitchers that push it. Right. Maybe pitchers that are taking the full 25 or pushing it a little bit every second. Because my understanding is that in the first year or two that they were doing this, even in the fall league, very, very, very few times in the entire seasons where any pitcher is like punished. And I believe it's an automatic ball, I think. But I'm pretty sure that only happened a few times. So maybe they start punishing more. Maybe they do try and crack down on it. But I don't think the pitch clock is going to make that big of a difference.
I think it's more about peer pressuring them into being quicker than it is about like punishing them for taking a while.
Yeah.
One thing that I was like, oh, this is great. It's going to speed up the game and all that. But in the playoffs, bases loaded, somebody gets a balk from that, that in itself, because I feel like playoffs is much of a slower kind of game. And like seeing a clock in the playoffs is just like, and someone losing because of that in itself, I'm not too sure how I feel about that.
This is a great point. And I remember thinking about this a couple years ago when we were first talking about pitch clocks and honestly about some of the other rules, right? I think something that was weird in 2020 is like we accepted like, all right, we're going to have all these crazy rules, with the runner on second base and extras, but like once we get to the real baseball, then we'll go back to real baseball. And it's like, okay, so then you're basically admitting that like the regular season is kind of this different form and it's not as serious and like that's weird. I think particularly with regards to the pitch clock, I agree. I almost would be okay putting in a pitch clock in Major League Baseball tomorrow for the regular season, having that for the regular season, and then completely getting rid of it for the postseason, because that is one of the best parts of the postseason. Do the games take too long? And is it a problem that, games start at 8 and they end at 12:30? I know it got a little bit better this year with the start times, but like, is that a problem because we want, 10-year-olds to be watching postseason baseball? Yes. But also like the tension of the postseason in between the pitches is what makes it amazing. Like that's the fact. Like sometimes it can be like, holy crap, this game's taking forever and it's no longer fun. We do have those moments too. But I do think that taking the attention and adding like a stress level, not even for like, oh, someone's going to lose the World Series because they got called an automatic ball. But I do kind of feel like that's where I would take it out. But I don't know. Maybe, who knows? Once we finally have it in a regular season, maybe it really won't make as much of a difference.
And I also think that it'll get applied correctly. I don't think, okay, so if like, Kenley Jansen takes too long in like Game 7 of the World Series, I think that umpire's just going to be like, yeah, like it's fine,
Right.
It's like extenuating circumstances. You're turning in an assignment in class late because like, your house burned down. Like it's a big moment. Like it's a big deal, right? And I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think
if
there's
you have
any
Joe West.
umpire. Oh, can you imagine? That would be the all-time ump show. I mean, I think most umpires have enough like feel that won't happen.
Oh man, that what was it? The walk-off balk for Texas versus Dodgers, I believe it was a while back.
Yeah, we've had a few balk-offs in the last
and I'm like,
few years.
It's just it feels cheap. There's no like, oh, we beat you. We could just say that.
It's so
just,
sudden.
Like, yeah.
Also, I mean, we make a lot of jokes about balks, and of course, I'm sure on a podcast about weird rules that is, supreme. But in that particular case, it really, really begs the question of like, if you're just a kid at that game and the game ends, and like the parent has to explain why the game ended, like. Especially if you're at the game and like you can't like watch the replay and be like, oh, see, he like sniffed a little too aggressively, like oh, see, there it was, right? Like I would just be so perplexed. I mean, it's a perplexing even when it happens in the 5th inning of a 7-run game, but like I can only imagine how bizarre that must have been for like the children at that game when it ended.
That's one of the questions I was actually going to ask you, because I had this whole thing about balks, and I was like, imagine you're a 14-year-old kid watching baseball for the first time in a baseball stadium. How do you feel about a balk? And it's like, like an adult doesn't really know all the questions. I mean, the answers to a balk. Like, so
I've been playing baseball my whole life. I played baseball in college for 4 years.
I think you should have been a closer, by the way. I saw your stats, and you should have been a closer.
My last year I was a closer, and then the first 3 was a problem. But the last year I had it. But I couldn't really explain box. It's just like a kind of thing, and it's weird. Like you kind of just have to watch a lot of baseball and play a lot of baseball to get the feel of it. Like certain things are right. They're like different categories of box, right? If you're a right-handed pitcher, you have to take your foot off the rubber before you throw to first base, right? If you come set, you can't then really move before you start pitching. I think the best way to think about the balk is, are you doing an action meant to unfairly deceive the runner and or the hitter to an extent? And sometimes that doesn't make sense because just, twitching a little bit in the set position isn't really anything at first glance. But like if you're so if you're a base runner, right, your job is to watch the pitcher. And as soon as the pitcher comes set, as soon as they move again, you're off, right? Because you're trying to get the best possible jump you can. So if that pitcher twitches a little bit, that's throwing you off, and then that's unfair, and so that's a balk. Would I want to be someone who has to professionally explain box to people all the time? No, I think that would be my least favorite job of all time.
I think I would just say it's like the NFL false start, kind of.
Yeah,
that's an interesting comparison. Yeah, I mean, it really is. I would love some balk statistics of which umpires. Like, are there umpires? Which umps have called the most balks? Maybe someone.
What types of balks? What are the most common categories of balk?
Who's gonna make the book? We need a book.
The balk book.
Yeah,
because like, are there umps who? Because the thing about it is like, it does require the umpire to be extremely attentive to the pitcher in a way that they aren't necessarily, even more than the umpire. The funniest is when it's not even the home plate ump that's calling it, right? When it comes from behind him.
They point, they're like, no, that's a balk.
Stop.
Well,
Stop.
my favorite is when the whole entire opposing team is just going, wow, that's a balk. And you see that one player that was probably looking at it the most.
Right.
That's my favorite part.
Jordan, we should do this. There'd be a funny video. Just literally ask major leaguers, what is a balk?
Right.
One sentence.
Let's do that. Honestly, man. I mean, maybe
you'll probably get a lot of sign-offs to be like, sorry, my Zoom isn't working.
I don't know what that means, man. I always come set.
Non-pitchers, no chance would be able to tell you. I don't think.
So with balk, they have a new like rules for low A pitchers or across low A, which is 2 step-offs, limited to 2 step-offs or pick-off attempts per plate appearances. So, wow, imagine that comes on. I mean, that in itself in the playoffs, I would love that.
Right.
Love it.
Right. Huge for the steal a base, steal a taco promotion in the World Series. I mean, you'd be. I know. And speaking of Trey Turner, by the way, who I believe was our recent taco hero. But yeah, man, like that, again, stolen bases are just one of the most fun things in baseball. It's not that complicated, right? And if you know that they're going to go, when Jake and I talked about this the other day, and Jake can kind of expound on this, like it's, you might say, oh, well, part of the pickoff is that it's a strategy and you have to keep them close. It's like, okay, but now we're just adding a different kind of strategy, which is just like, is it worth it to try and throw over a third time, which could be an automatic balk, right? Or is it worth it to throw over even a first time, or should you just focus on throwing the damn ball and trust your catcher, right? Or you just decide, okay, instead of throwing over using a pickoff, I'm going to do a pitch out, right? And that's how I'm going to, keep my runner on instead of throwing over 17 times. So I just think this adds another layer. This is our favorite one for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's like a general conversation about all these rules that you're basically balancing two things, right? You're balancing like what people are used to and what people like about baseball and what players know with potentially making the game more entertaining, right? And there's a level where like, okay, if we made every ninth hitter use a cucumber instead of a baseball bat, that would be really entertaining. Like, right? Like people would watch that every time, right?
I would think I'm on acid.
That's exactly like you would be exactly. But there's a point, right, that it tips the scale where it's like, yeah, it's entertaining, but like that's not baseball. You know what I mean? And I think this pickoff move is both entertaining and still interesting baseball strategy. And just because we're not used to it doesn't mean that it's bad, right? There are things that we're not used to. You know, people are resistant to change in this universe, right? And a lot of change is good and a lot of change is bad. And I think it's just you need a level of nuance to figure out which of these rule changes like are good and, you know, enhance baseball and which of them don't. And it's a very personal preference thing. You know, some people love robo-umps and, you know, I love some of those people and that's fine.
You know, what about what Mike Zunino would think about all this? That's the most important question of them all.
That's a good question.
Yeah, this could be bad news for Mike Z here if we are getting rid of the framing. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think with new rules like that, like if we want to get into the robo-umps conversation, you know, there are still going to be pitchers that prefer throwing to certain catchers. Like that's still going to change because probably the biggest part of catching, well, I know framing now since we can quantify it, right? But game calling is the most invisible, but most important, probably the most important invisible skill that we have in baseball, right? Like that is the freaking that the catchers are the one. I mean, I know pitchers can shake and veteran pitchers will say, I'm throwing this now. And sometimes coaches are, but like, that is the whole game is what pitch you're going to throw. And like, we just assume we always give credit to the pitcher, right? The pitchers get all the love because they're the one throwing the pitch and executing the pitch and showing up on Pitching Ninja, right? And yeah, they're the ones with the talent to throw that pitch. But like, it's James McCann calling that high changeup for Lucas Giolito. Like he's the one that decided like this is what was going to work. This is what the catchers were guiding these pitchers to these great performances in a lot of cases, and that will still exist. Like that part is that you can't take that away, and so that's a skill that by all accounts, Mike Zunino still has, right? So like that is going to still keep him on the field. So that's the point where I think that maybe the fact where it's just like, oh, now there's no framing, now you can just put anybody back there who can just catch a baseball, like. I don't think it's going to be that simple. I
wonder if anybody knows who caught the game for James Paxton's no-hitter.
Was it not
Jesus Sucre?
Was it Sucre? No, I don't. Who was it? Was it Narvaez? Must have been Narvaez, right? No, that was 18, 19. I don't remember. I'm because I'm thinking. For me, it's like John Jaso is my guy because for Felix, like it's John Jaso. Oh. Like that's for the Felix Perfect Game. Like it's John Jaso. So I don't remember the Paxton one as well. I wasn't watching that.
I'm gonna look it up.
That speaks to you know calling a good game versus you know focusing on the pitcher and all that. But you know I think the no hitter should be for the catcher in itself because you know.
Well, and I bring up James McCann because he was catching for Lucas when he threw his no-hitter in 2020. And we know that he, you know, this is a very normal thing for pitchers to, you know, buy their catcher a Rolex or whatever after they throw their no-hitter. That I heard Alec Mills talked about that with his no-hitter for the Cubs. I assume it was Caratini. But yeah, so.
It was Zunino. It was Zunino for
so, you know, it was, this offseason was weird because everybody was like, oh, no, universal DH. No, we're not going to have that. But here, you can have this. And it was like, what? You know, it was like kind of like this balancing act where no universal DH, but more stealing bases. And it seems like, why couldn't we get universal DH in there too? Since you guys are doing all of this other stuff.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's just they're just holding it back. I mean, it's just because of when the
CBA
is coming up. So, I mean, by the way, reminder that universal DH does still basically exist at every other level of baseball and will exist, I'm sure, in 2022. So it's just a matter of time. I was watching Strict Trading Game the other day, and they mentioned like, oh yeah, like pitchers are going to start hitting, I think, next week. I was like, oh my God, right. Like they do have to get a few reps in spring training games again. And again, I've been making this point the last few months. I am telling you, you National League fans are going to hate it. Every second that a pitcher comes up to the plate this year, you are going to be so mad and be like, why did I ever want this to stay a thing? I'm so confident that this will be the case. I'm not looking forward to pitchers hitting.
I mean,
but I just want to add one more thing. if assuming we do make it and there's no DH this year, which I still think maybe they change it, whatever. The last hurrah for these pitchers hitting is going to be something. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
this is it.
This is it. Like, this will be, you're going to see some guys swinging harder than they ever have, because to be the last pitcher to homer, I guess Ohtani's in his own category. Last pitcher to homer that'll be a fun fact for sure, because it's happening this year.
Well, Jake, I see you with the Marlins hat. Is that Marlins? Yeah, that's the Marlins. Dontrelle Willis should be the hitting coach for pitchers.
I love this idea.
For this year.
I love the idea of a hitting coach for pitchers. I think that is an amazing idea.
It's such a great idea, because it feels like the kind of thing that the Dodgers would do. Now, I know this year, well, actually, in general, there is a limit for uniformed personnel. Like, you can only have so many coaches. You can't just have like 30 coaches in the dugout. And especially with COVID, I think it's even more limited. But like, that seems like something the Dodgers would do. You know, they already have like 15 GMs, like 1,000 special assistants and scouts and all these analysts. Like, the Dodgers should be like, you know what? We're going to have a hitting coach just for our pitchers. And that's like, that's the edge, man. If you have that much money.
That's the thing. If you can get your pitchers to hit like 195 instead of 105, like, that's not nothing.
Man. Yeah, absolutely. I would love. Damn, I'm curious which organizations' pitchers have hit the best over the last 20 years. I'm going to look that up as soon as we're
done. Yeah, we're going to look that up.
Angels.
Well, we can't have that anymore. That's true.
Yeah. With you're saying by 2022 you expect all universal DH to happen, and what do you think that players like Nelson Cruz or people like that will extend their career a little bit more, or people like Albert Pujols might extend their career a little bit more because they want to get to that illustrious number? Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, I mean,
I think Pujols is different, because I don't think anybody is going to pay.
It all depends on his wife. It depends on.
That's true. That's true. Wait, we got to tune into that Instagram. She's got us. She's definitely going to have that scoop.
Forget Rosenthal and pass it.
Right. No, but I think Pujols is different than Cruz. It's not really, even though they're both super old. But like, Cruz is still one of the probably 20 best hitters in the league. Pujols hasn't been close to that for a while. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just better. It's 15 more starting jobs. Like, it's that simple. That's why the union wants it. That's why players want it. And again, pitchers like to like talk shit about how much they like, oh, I'm so good at hitting, right? Like, oh, watch this, so and so. But like, most of them will tell you, this is miserable, I don't want to hit either. So that's what the players want. It's not that complicated.
Okay. One weird rule, not so weird, but kind of weird rule I wanted to talk about was just baseball stadiums specific ground rule doubles. Oh. That one is super weird to me. And, it feels like it's more because of this nostalgia than actual common sense. You talk about the Ivy League, the Ivy green on the Cubs, how that's one. Boston's Fenway Park outfield, they could just raise that up just a little bit more. And it seems like they could do that because, even like T-Mobile Park, or, when it was called Safeco, they moved the outfield back and forth for like 2-3 seasons. And, why is it just, culture and nostalgia that they don't just fix these things?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think one of the best and unique things about baseball is that all the stadiums are different. I mean, you look at any other sport, really, and the field of play is almost uniform across different stadiums. I know in soccer, there are different pitch sizes, right? But like, that's just, dimension changes. It's not like personality changes. Each park has its own kind of personality, that's why they call them parks, right? And not stadiums, because it's like going to the park. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes baseball really beautiful. And would it make more sense to put in padding and not literally brick with grass in Chicago? Yeah, probably. But every time a ball gets stuck in the ivy, it ups the overall weirdness quotient of our sport. And that's fine. That's great. I think it's odd when new stadiums like purposefully put things into the new stadiums that would be like this, right? It feels almost like forcing it. Like Tal's Hill in Houston when it first came out in center field, people were like, why is there a large hill in play? And then over time we got used to it, right? Like it was like, oh yeah, there's just like a hill. Just don't worry about it. But yeah, no, I'm for it. I think stadiums can be even weirder, man. Like one of the biggest problems I have with new stadiums is that they're kind of boring. Like Texas is kind of boring and like get weird. Like who cares, right? It's still baseball.
We need more obstacle courses in the infield.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I think.
The Sam Miller pit, put a pit in left field.
Put a pit. Yeah, we need a giant pit. Yeah, I mean,
pipe.
Oh, there you go. That's a good. Now we're talking. I think, it is one of the most basic, but obviously best thing about our sport, and that extends beyond the majors, right? I mean, this is true at college levels. This is true at little league parks. This is true at like almost every park. Sure, when you get to lower levels, it becomes more standardized. It's 400 to center. It's 330 to right. It's 330 to left. But the scenery beyond the outfield fence at the lower levels is always going to be more interesting than a major league park because you don't have seats most of the time, right? Apply that all through the minors. But I agree, and it's weird because how many more new stadiums are we gonna have in the next little while, right? I mean, Oakland continues to come out with new renderings every freaking week. It seems like
it's like this. They got the new version of The Sims and just start playing.
just kept having a great time. Kept doing great time.
And now, by the way, I assume you guys saw that there's a stadium creator and the next MLB The Show, which is very exciting.
I haven't played baseball games or video games in like 15 years. I
was in the same boat until quarantine. And I was like, well, I got nothing else to do. So
I started a podcast during the quarantine. So
there you go.
There you go. You're definitely not alone with that. It's good though. But yeah, so I agree. I mean, I'm sure there's some level of within reason, and I don't know though. Like I'm not sure if there are. This is something I would love to ask someone at the league about. Like, are there actual rules about what's within reason, right? Like if Oakland said we want left field to be 275 feet away, would MLB step in and be like, no?
Yes, I believe they would. I think there is like a number that it needs to be
within
each part,
right? Like, can you not have a Polo Grounds 460 to center anymore? Like, is that just not allowed? But even within that, like size of the fence is still a big deal. Just like general sight lines, batter's eye is a big issue for. I know major league hitters talk about that a lot. That some places are better to hit than others just because of what they're seeing behind the pitcher. So yeah, there's all kinds of things. I love it. And then in terms of your original question, which is like literal ground rules and ground rule doubles and stuff. Yeah, all that shit is hilarious. Like always seeing the managers, and this is true at the college level too, right? When they come and talk, like, it's like, what are they talking about? They all know the rules of baseball, but they have to be like, okay, you see down there in that corner, you see how there's a fire extinguisher, like kind of off to the left. If it hits that, it's actually a triple. It's like, okay.
That's why college baseball is great, right? Because it's like, yeah, so that there's a dorm that sticks out into right field, and if you hit it, like it's in play, right? And in the majors, we don't really have that.
Yeah. Well, there was that home run from A-Rod hitting the camera a while ago, and I don't know if there was a rule for that or anything like that. Did you guys are familiar with that home run?
I don't really remember. Was this like down the line? I don't remember.
It was in the playoffs. They won the World Series that year. A-Rod got like 14, 15 hits in the playoffs, but one home run. This was the only home run. And it was right in front of right to the camera, and they didn't know if it was a home run or not because
like because they didn't actually have an angle of it, and because they did, yeah.
I remember the Mookie Betts rob.
Oh yeah.
I have the A-Rod one up. He hits it like down the line. Oh, that's great. The camera is on the other side of the fence, like a TV camera,
and it has a green tarp over
off the screen. I think that's a home run for sure.
With you were talking about other leagues and stuff like that. What is one rule from another league that you would love to see implemented in major leagues? Like, is it in KBO or in softball or in college that you were like, oh, this is awesome?
Oh man. Well, so I mean, I watch a lot of softball, and there's definitely some softball rules, re-entry and stuff like that, which is now, I guess, normal in this crazy spring training that we're having. In terms of KBO rules that are actually different, I'm not sure. And there's some like format things, like
a lot of like roster construction.
Yeah,
stuff.
like there are more roster construction rules, especially when you talk about like winter league stuff. That's where it really gets fun. I don't know if that's really like on field rules that are dramatically different, but some of that stuff is very, very, very cool.
I personally want to see more passion and celebration like Lidom does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just like copy and paste like a vibe, then I would do that for sure, And I think the same thing with softball is like those girls, like it's just a different culture where like they don't care that like being up on the top step and like cheering and screaming and like making a lot of noise is like not against the culture. Like it's the norm in softball. And you would never see like, all of the Reds up on the top step, like clapping and doing a chant, but like, why not? Like, who cares?
Yeah. No, honestly.
And they did that, and they do that in Lidom. I remember when I got to be in the dugout for one Lidom game with Aguilas, and they had the whole team was like, they like had like a drum thing, and they were clapping, like keeping a rhythm, like the whole inning. It's like great, like that's awesome. But for rules, this is not a rule, but this is a stylistic thing. Ready? In Japan, the count is strikes and then balls. And I want that. I like that more.
So it goes
like a 2-1 count is 2 strikes and 1 ball.
Oh, that makes sense because it's okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's more
I
readable.
think strikes dictate the count, not balls.
Yeah. It's weird to see 3-4, or like 3-2. It's just like
2-3. 2-3. Yeah, we got a 2-3 count.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would take some getting used to.
Jordan doesn't like it.
0-3. 0-3 count.
Oh, okay. Well, I think those are the questions I had. I truly appreciate your time with this.
Of course, dude.
No. It was exciting. With your insight with different leagues is something that, I truly have found more affinity for even softball because of you guys. It's an amazing thing, and it should be expanded more and given more of a platform. So I appreciate what you two do for baseball. Is there anything you guys are working on new and stuff?
Yes, but maybe perhaps. Obviously, opening day is coming up, so we're working on some stuff for this season. Just follow us. Cespedes BBQ Baseball Barbecue is our podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network. So be sure to check that out. And if you're listening and you have connection to D3 baseball, we also do a podcast just on D3 baseball. It's called The Podcast About D3 Baseball.
It's only one.
It's the only one. That's why we call it that.
You guys have the only one of every baseball thing, the only one.
Exactly. Well, listen, as you mentioned, a lot of people started podcasts this last year. I'm pretty sure we're still alone in the D3 baseball podcast space, which is good. We're happy to corner that market. So seriously, thank you for having us on. Again, tremendous introduction. And this was great, man. Thank you, Eddie.
I appreciate that. You guys have a great Saturday.
I will. I'm going to go do my taxes.
Oh, bye.
Thank you, Eddie, man. We'll talk to you soon. If you ever need anything else, just let us know. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Have a good day.